Hey everyone, thanks for joining us for today's Peer-to-Peer World Virtual Conference. This conference is brought to you by 5 companies that serve nonprofits. They've come together to share their unique experience and knowledge with you today. These companies are Accelerated Charity Growth, Budo, Cathexis Partners, Op3, and Turnkey. My name is Nhu T, and I'm Editor-in-Chief and Content Director at Nonprofit Pro, and I'm so excited to join you as the MC for today's conference. The title of this session is called Crawl, Walk, Run Your Way to Peer-to-Peer Fundraising Success. During this session, please feel free to submit any questions you have during the Questions tab on your GoToWebinar control panel. The speakers will answer the questions toward the end of the session. And please note that this session will be recorded and made available online after today's conference. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mark Becker.
Thanks, Nhu. Really appreciate everybody joining us this morning or afternoon if you're in Europe or elsewhere internationally. Thank you for joining us, or if you're listening to recording, glad you could find us. Hope you'll find this a very useful session. While everybody else is on mute, we do have the question panel up, the chat panel, so please, as you think of them, ask your questions, as Nhu said, and we'll get to them at the end of the session. So looking forward to a great discussion. Again, my name is Mark Becker. I'm the founding partner of Cathexis Partners, and also joining us today are Sarah and Karen. Sarah, you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Sure. Good morning, everyone. My name is Sarah Smith. I'm the Director of Development at Safe Passage, which is a domestic violence organization serving a mostly rural county in Western Massachusetts, and I direct all of our development activities throughout the year. For running our shelter and our counseling programs and everything else that we do to help survivors of domestic violence. Peer-to-peer fundraising is my favorite.
Excellent. And Karen?
Hi, everybody, and good morning. I am Karen Cincotti. I'm at the Roswell Park Alliance Foundation. We raise money for the Roswell Park Comprehensive Cancer Center in Buffalo, New York. So we're a regional foundation, but we're trying to raise funds peer-to-peer from all over the country, as you can imagine. My role primarily is focusing on the technology. I take care of all our online giving platforms, from our peer-to-peer to our donation forms, and I work really closely with our fundraising and marketing teams to make our peer-to-peer events the success that they are.
Great stuff. So, you know, this session, when I was thinking about what to talk about in this year's conference, I really came back to, you know, how much it takes to pull off a really good peer-to-peer campaign, either a physical event or a virtual campaign. You know, and just like Rome wasn't built in a day, neither are great peer-to-peer campaigns, right? So I think I brought together a couple of great examples and experts that can shed some light on their experiences and their challenges and their successes, and looking forward to having a great conversation that hopefully spurs some new ideas and some inspiration, and would love to hear from you any challenges that you all are seeing out there as well. So let's start out, you know, you have to be able to crawl before you can walk, right? So let's talk a bit about the basics. But before we get into that, I'm going to launch a poll question online here. So on your screen, let me hit the launch button here. You should see a poll question. And basically would love to hear from everybody, you know, where you consider yourself based on, you know, do you consider yourself at the crawling position, kind of starting out with peer-to-peer fundraising, really, you know, trying to get the basics down, or would you consider yourself more in the walk level, which is you've been doing peer-to-peer campaigns for a few years, and you're kind of adding new techniques and new tactics and re-looking at things, or do you really consider yourself in your campaign seasoned, experienced, and finding, you know, more advanced ways to rejuvenate and re-engage with your participants. You can see yourself more in that run stage. So I'm going to leave that poll open for just a few more seconds to give folks the chance to respond. Just want to get a feel for the audience here. So another 10 seconds, I'm going to close that down. So if you have a chance, if you haven't had a chance to vote yet, please do. And then I'll show the results here. Just still seeing people entering in, so I'll give it another moment. All right, I'm going to close that out and share the results. So basically, you should see there, if I did this right, you should be seeing the results. It looks like a pretty even distribution, and I like that. Some folks, about 42%, consider them at the crawl stage, 37% at the walk stage, and 22% at the run. Sarah and Karen, since you are the two that aren't on mute, can you verify that that's what you're seeing right now, those poll results?
Yep.
Did I do that right?
Right.
Yay me. All right, so it's a pretty good distribution. Good to see that we've got some folks that are feeling pretty seasoned and experienced and in that run stage. So as well as a fair amount of people that are self-subscribed at the beginning crawl stage, where you're at the same stage as Captain Kirk and Leo crawling. So let's go back to the presentation here. So let's talk about the basics, right? I always beat this drum, so apologies in advance if you have heard this one too many times from me before, but I'm going to keep on saying it. When you're starting out, and every year, make sure you set your goals and make sure that everybody that's involved, the committee, the stakeholders internally, are all in agreement on what those goals are. And if you're in the crawl stage, it might be as simple as, you have a fundraising goal, a sponsorship goal, a number of sponsors, a number of participants. Hopefully, you have more goals than that, and especially if you're in the walk or run stage, you'll have more advanced goals. But always relook at your goals year over year. Make sure they're set in advance and everybody gets agreement on those. Just to double check, Sarah and Karen, you guys are seeing my presentation again, correct?
Yep.
Okay, good. Ooh, all right. Look at me, I'm 2 for 2. Make sure that your campaign is really obviously a spotlight on the mission. Always keep the details related back to the mission and what your goal is, and help them make sure that it always relates back and shows them where the money is going to. Here's another example. The first example I showed was from the Susan G. Komen 3-day. This is from Central Florida Second Harvest. They do a great job as well, kind of relating back to the mission. And in addition to that, they also, when it comes to their donation levels, they show the buying power of their food network and how a small donation can go a long way. So when someone goes to support a participant, they're not literally going to be giving $90 to peanut butter, and the disclaimer in the donation form shows that, but it shows their buying power. And Sarah's going to show you an example of their giving levels and how they relate it back to the mission here in a moment as well. So, kind of always different ways to relate it back to the mission. In addition to mission focus, set the tone, right? What do you want the audience to feel, both online and if it's a physical event, at the actual event itself? What is the tone of the event? And make sure that resonates with your audience, and keep in mind your audience personas. Even if you don't go through a really deep dive a review of creation of personas for your audience, do a little activity even amongst yourselves to try to figure out who your audience is, and make sure that the tone resonates with them, and again relates and doesn't take away from your mission. Also, talking about the basics, make sure you have the right platform to do all of this. And we recently put out a guide, our second version of the peer-to-peer landscape guide, where we looked at 39 different peer-to-peer fundraising tools, and didn't rate them so much as just verified what functionality they include. Oh, Karen, can you hear me? Sarah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Karen, hopefully your software comes back here momentarily. You got to love technology. Looking at software selection, speaking of that, let's look at our two clients here. Ride for Roswell has quite the history of peer-to-peer fundraising, 25 years plus. They started out, obviously, 25 years ago, there wasn't online fundraising platforms, peer-to-peer platforms. So it was all about paper registration and fundraising, offline donation, etc. Then they moved to TeamRaiser. When it came out, I believe 2001 was when it officially came out. And then they moved to Net Community Teams, another Blackbaud product. At the time, Convio was a separate company. Later, they moved to Conterra Sphere, and then back to TeamRaiser, which by that time was acquired by Convio. So, and then most of that history, they've also had Raiser's Edge. Karen, can you hear me now?
Yeah, you're back for me. Yep, that's exactly what happened. So just, and as I said to Mark the other day when we were talking, it's just, we've always been a Blackbaud Raiser's Edge, as our main database of records. So that has definitely dictated that we've kind of become this Blackbaud client for many years.
Yeah, so quite often the CRM will help drive the peer-to-peer solution, either because it's part of an enterprise solution, or the integration is straightforward, or there's a solid third-party option. Another example, but different, is Safe Passage's Hot Chocolate Run, where they started out. Well, Sarah, yeah, do you want to speak to this piece?
Sure. So it should say 16 years. This is our 16th year. And we have used online registration and peer-to-peer fundraising that entire time. The event started just as a straight 5K community road race with no peer-to-peer element at all in 2004. And then in 2009, we worked with RunReg, which is a company local in Western Massachusetts, to build PledgeReg, which is a new peer-to-peer fundraising platform that integrated with the system that we were already using. And we really loved working with them. And then one wonderful thing about them was that they actually built the platform in response to our wishes every year, because we were their biggest peer-to-peer client. And so we added new features every year, and together built this big, they built it. I just told them what to do with it. But yeah, it's a great product. And then a couple years ago, Mark and I actually talked about where we were going with our CRM. And I told Mark that we were looking at Salesforce, and he encouraged me to look at GreatFeats because of the Salesforce integration. And so we made the very hard decision to move from this local company that we love so much to start working with GreatFeats instead. Because of that integration, primarily, though GreatFeats, which is now OneCause, also has other features that we're really excited about that we didn't have before. This is our second year using OneCause, and we've actually just opened registration a few days ago, so we're just starting to see the benefits of being in a multi-year relationship with this company. One amazing feature that we've never had before is that our fundraisers now have access to their prior year fundraising information, how much they raised, who gave it, how much, how to get in touch with that donor. Every year before now, our fundraisers have been starting totally from scratch every year. So we're really excited.
Yeah, that's got to be a big win and a nice little happy surprise for the participants that are back already, right? And you said you just launched registration this week?
Yes, on Monday. And we
nice.
are, I have the dashboard up right now. We are at 688 registrants in about 3 days. And planning to sell out, as we always do, at 6,300 registrants well in advance of our event on December 8th this year.
That's great. It's not even hot chocolate weather yet, but I guess they aren't doing the spiced pumpkin lattes already, so it's all relative, right? Awesome. Thanks. All right. So, and then, for those folks that are doing, actual physical events, you have to go beyond just the website and obviously make sure even in your crawl space, crawl phase of your event, make sure safety is a priority. Take care of your sponsorships, what that looks like, permits, routes, staff and volunteers and facilities. And we'll talk kind of more about those. In fact, Sarah, do you want to? Here's a couple of screenshots in preparation for your event. Anything to share there?
So on the left, you see stacks of mugs. It's called the Hot Chocolate Run because we actually give homemade hot chocolate to every finisher in a collectible ceramic mug. One of the ways that we set ourselves apart from other races in the early years was giving people a mug instead of a t-shirt. And on the right side is our race director's garage and driveway and all of our signage drying out after, I think he must have hosed them down and then let them to dry in the sun. I just thought it was a funny picture to share.
That's great. That summarizes everybody's event production at some phase. And then here's some pictures from the actual event, right?
Yeah. So a few things to share here. Let's see. So it's a very family-friendly event. One important element of this event is to get the word out about our mission, which is to give safety and justice and healing to survivors of domestic violence. And so that is our approach to domestic violence prevention and intervention is very multi-generational. We want to reach kids, we want to reach adults of all ages. And so the event is very, very family friendly. Anytime you have marshmallows, that helps. So we do have a lot of kids. We try to, the tone of the event is very positive, upbeat, celebratory. We want to make it more of a celebration of Safe Passage's work rather than a sort of somber reminder of why we're here. That said, we give everybody a big sticker to wear on their sleeve or on their front that the kid with the Rudolph nose, his sticker says, "Another man against domestic violence." That's one of my favorite pictures. But it's a way for people to engage with the mission and be proud about why they're doing the event. And it's also a safe way to engage with the mission. We have just like in any group of people anywhere in the world, we have many, many survivors of domestic violence participating in the event every year. And unlike an event that maybe is around disease like breast cancer, where you've got survivors very publicly wearing their survivor status on their shirt and being celebrated, we don't ask our survivors at our event to self-identify in that way. Sorry, my phone's ringing. Because it's simply, we want to allow people privacy, but it's also a safety risk to have people be public in that way. So the stickers always get a really good response, and man, they make great photos.
Yeah, in general, I mean, your photography is awesome.
Yeah, we've got really talented people.
Awesome. And Karen, can you tell us a little bit about the Empire State Ride?
Sure. Today I'm going to talk about two of our events, the Empire State Ride and the Ride for Roswell. So the Empire State Ride, I would classify more we're at the walking stage. This is only has been around for 5 years. It's a small endurance ride. We have riders that go from New York City to Niagara Falls. That's a 7-day event, 500 miles on a bike. And the mission to raise money for Roswell Park and curing cancer and cancer cures and ending cancer. All of that mission is very, very important to us. And it's an endurance ride, so we have their minimum is a 3,500 minimum, and some of them obviously go way beyond that. This year, though, was really exciting for us because we broke the $1 million mark. So we had about 170 riders all together that raised $1 million. So that, super exciting for us to meet that threshold, but there's a lot for us to learn as we're approaching it. And that's why we definitely call it in the walk phase of the peer-to-peer world. How do we is it for new riders every year? Is it out of town riders? I mean, not everybody knows about Roswell Park, but it's like a bucket list item. So we're still doing a lot of data crunching around this event in terms of how can we succeed for the next 5 years, and what's our plan, and how do we promote the mission to get people to sign up for this? It's not everybody can do a week-long ride, let alone take off to work, but actually climb those hills in central New York. So it's very much an exciting time for us as we see this event grow.
That's awesome.
And this is, kind of going back to Mark's basics. Every event, every peer-to-peer event, you need to tell them the specifics. You need to tell your participants when it is, what it is, how they can do it, and, how much, et cetera. You have to give them those details on the website. And, event planning can be, whether or not they have to dress for the weather, or whether or not they have to bring a bag or a helmet. So, and especially something like the Empire State Ride, it's very specific. We have pages on our website geared towards the traveling and, what you need to bring and what you need to pack. I mean, they're gone for a weekend. They need to know too, we have tents every night, and will you have an air mattress? Yes, you're going to have an air mattress. And how do I get clean towels? So all that stuff is very, very, the more you can give your participants so they feel comfortable about signing up and answering their questions, and then they'll feel comfortable about raising the money. We even had this year a Facebook Live event about what to pack and how to pack, because it is, you're traveling for a week and you need many different things to make your bike ride successful. So just those kind of things are very important for your events that are in any stage.
Yeah, and great use of Facebook Live for the info session. That's cool.
Yeah, it was great. So this is our Ride for Roswell. This is definitely in the running stage of the crawl, walk, run. The Ride for Roswell has been around, and we'll be celebrating its 25th year next year. Over those 25 years or 24 years, we've raised almost $600 million. Last year, we raised 5.5. We have about 8,000 riders, and we have multiple routes on one day. It's a one-day affair, anything from 3 miles for the family to 100 miles for those long-distance runners. It's very much a part of the Buffalo community. It's not a race. Nothing's timed. It's a fun event with survivors, with family, with people honoring their loved ones that they may have lost, and it's a very big community spirit.
I like it. All right, so let's move into the walking phase of things. And that's where I think things like participant toolkits fall into. Hopefully, in even in your crawl phase, you're doing some of that. But providing tools to your participants to help them with fundraising. And what does a participant toolkit look like? That can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. But it's about giving them resources to help them, advocate on your behalf. So whatever helps, fundraising, FAQs and suggestions, success stories, copies of posters, offline donation forms, and some of this will be dependent on what platform you use, and others of it is down to how much time you have to build this content. But it's all about adding to it year over year and season over season and improving on it. And don't hesitate to reach out and check out some of your other peers and what they're doing, and learn from what they've been able to put together. Year over year, also make sure you follow up with folks. Take the time. What does that look like? It depends on how much staff you have, how much time you can commit to it. But definitely, at least in your autoresponder messages and your follow-up communication strategy, reach out to everybody and thank them. But hopefully you can do a little bit more hands-on with some of your VIPs and your team captains and your top fundraisers, and reach out, call them, write them a personal handwritten note, and make sure those messages are coming from members of the team. Maybe not necessarily the EDs, but more the folks that are on the ground level getting it done, or maybe even someone affected by the cause, a patient, a survivor, what have you. Have it come from them, but make them feel appreciated at the end of the day. And advance your analytics. Look at your trends year over year as you get into this more seasoned, legacy events. Take the time to dig into the data to find those trends and take advantage of exploiting those trends in a positive way to help increase participation and fundraising. I think these are some of your screenshots, Karen, from Ride for Roswell. Any color to add to this?
Well, I think data is just becoming more and more important every year for us. And, as you grow your events, definitely look at the data in so many different ways. Like for our ride, we know that if you register in January, you're going to raise more money than if you register in June, obviously. But also look at what the age groups are. We are now definitely marketing on Facebook based on age groups. So, the baby boomers are going to get a different message than the millennials or the Gen Xers, so we're trying those different things to see how we can get them to register. And then, but we're trying to see too, like, if you are on different routes, are you raising more? If you're on a team, how big of that team? What's that optimum size for a team? A team of over 10 raises more money than a team of 5. So how do we get the 5 people to get to a 10? But you need to know your data so you can make those decisions on what your goals are and how you can increase your fundraising.
Great stuff.
So these are examples, of our tools. So on all of our websites, we have a lot of tools for our fundraisers to use, whether it's posters or impact sheets or social media tools, email signatures. A lot of this is all for them to download and print out and help them do their fundraising. And we have specific materials also for teams and team captains that we make sure they know about.
Yeah, I would say check out the Ride for Roswell website. It's very clean. It's very easy. It's well organized. It's very, very cool site and a lot of information, but easy to navigate and find what you're looking for. So your team has done great there.
Thank you. This shows on the left side, again, we use TeamRaiser. We created a survey tool where people could actually order fundraising, like printed fundraising equipment, or not equipment, but like brochures and business cards or general posters. So we let them order it for free, and we cut it off at a certain point, but we just use the tools within Luminate to help us do that. And this past year, we came up with a new idea of giving them the idea that they could order some thank you cards at Thanksgiving time to say, wanted to make sure, thank you for being a donor. And people loved it. I mean, it was our first year, but we had like about 200 orders, and it was also another great touch point in the off season. Like our registrations doesn't open until January, so we were able to talk to them in Thanksgiving time.
Yeah, that's awesome.
This is an example of a participant page. Our participant pages are pretty standard. We don't use a lot of custom coding, but we do actually work with Cathexis on having badges that are a little bit more unique on each of their pages. So to try to give them that extra acknowledgement. So there's just a screenshot to show 2 sets of badges, but if they've updated their story, they get a badge. If they've raised a certain amount of money, they get a badge. If this gentleman has raised $500,000 in his lifetime, so he gets a badge. So I try to add different badges to help them feel empowered and proud of their achievements.
Anytime you can kind of add that gamification, if you will, and give them kind of little badges for acknowledgement, it definitely helps. And Sarah, I think you guys do a great job. I think this is actually a video, let me see, of bringing the mission back to the donation levels. Yeah, so when you hover over the different tiles, it shows, where that money goes to. And I think that's just, a great use and built into by default, I believe, the Great Feet or OneCause peer-to-peer fundraising tool. Anything else to add to that?
Yeah, it's built in. We use stock photos just like everyone else, and it's a new thing for us. It's just a point that I want to make about the last thing I want anybody to think is that we are sharing actual photos of our clients. Obviously, all of our services are confidential. So this is a new thing for us, and so far it's working out great. We've always been very text-based, and so Great Feet's kind of pushed me towards, all right, you actually do have to put a photo of a real person and not just an event participant. We have lots of like smiley, happy photos of people in our red hats wearing race bibs, but those don't convey the mission like these photos hopefully do.
Yeah, definitely.
So this is my own actual fundraising page. If anybody would like to make a donation, I'd be happy to send you a link. And so these are, yeah, just a quick dashboard of how things are going for me. There's a couple other slides coming up that Mark, if you'd advance it, I can show you a little bit more. So on the left here, there's a timeline. OneCause integrates with social media like Facebook and stuff to add elements to this timeline. So it's not just who donated and the fact that somebody registered, but it's also like somebody joined, here Lucy, somebody joined Lucy in the event, was inspired by Lucy to sign up, somebody joined Lucy's team, things like that. On the right-hand side, I'm sorry, they're hard to read, especially that bottom one. The bottom one is just the list of the donors from last year, and it says, you know, this person donated X amount on this date, and a big green button on the right to ask that person, and it just sends out a quick email. And I'm really excited about that.
Yeah, nice above, and clean.
Yeah. Up above, I just wanted to point out that for the first time ever, we have recognition of self-donations that are made usually during registration, but occasionally after. So it says, you've made a great start to your fundraising by donating $30 for your page. We've never been able to like give any kind of recognition or even really segment out the self-donors versus people who had other kinds of donations on their page. So that's new for us.
Nice. Excellent. All right. So let's get into some of the more advanced topics and what kind of happens as you're maturing and you're trying to figure out how to refine and advance or even, you know, keep a plateau of participants, because we're seeing that a lot in the benchmark reports that campaigns should feel like it's a win if they even keep their registrations kind of flat, or maybe even have the registrations go down, but having the fundraising go up. So, you know, how can you kind of move the needle a bit with different techniques? And I can't put together a montage of people running without having Tom Cruise do that, his running, because no one runs better than Tom Cruise. All right. So, you know, I think it all starts with after you've been kind of in your campaigns year over year and season over season, it kind of becomes old hat for you, and it's really easy to kind of focus on the minute details of a pressure point or reaction or, you know, responding to a trend. But I would say whenever you can, year over year, take step back and look at things with a fresh set of eyes. Both your own, try to, as much as you can, put yourself in a space coming in as a one of your participants or donors, but also just ask friends, family, other members of your team, and some of your big cheerleaders, team captains, your bigger advocates, to look at your site, look at the registration flow, the fundraising process, your sponsorship opportunities, and how they're engaged or rewarded for their involvement. And you know, if it's a physical event, the event production. try to, always look at that both freshly after a campaign is completed, but also leading into the new year by pulling out all their trends and et cetera. And you can't have a presentation these days about peer-to-peer fundraising without having a discussion or including Facebook fundraising to that. As much as I'm not a fan of Facebook, I can't ignore the fact that organizations are doing amazingly well with Facebook fundraising. And I know that we're going to share, Karen's going to share some of her findings and information about that here shortly. But yeah, not to be ignored. When you're looking at your website, think about mobile first, right? And just that whole mentality. Don't look at it from your desktop view as a starting point. Maybe pull out your phone, tablet, etc., and look at the website from that perspective first, and make sure it's easy to interact with. Make sure it's easy to find the information you need, that your screen doesn't need to be pinched or expanded, that type of thing. It can be simply scrolled through. You might have a lot of information to share, and it might require some scrolling, but your main calls to action should be, on that first screen when you get into it, because the statistics are impossible to ignore. Half folks are out there, and your stats might be more one way or the other, but depending on your audience and your demographic. But it's impossible to ignore the fact that more and more people are accessing websites only via mobile or primarily via mobile phones. And then when you get into your year-over-year analytics and seeing how you're doing compared to your goals, start looking at, taking it up a notch and finding those trends. Look at year-over-year counts. How, if you opened up registration at about the same time or maybe a little bit earlier, hopefully this year, how are you compared to your number of participants for the same weeks out as the previous season, and how about for fundraising, et cetera. And that'll really help you look for trends and figure out which messages need to be adapted, and maybe put out an additional promo code to get people excited and share it amongst themselves to get their friends to sign up. But definitely, advance your analytics and your reporting. And basically try to move people up the ladder of engagement, right? Try to increase your year-over-year participation. See who's doing re-registration. See if your re-registration is going down, and if so, why is that? Try to reach out to a couple of folks and see if they've just gotten bored with it. It's not meeting their needs. They're not connecting with the mission anymore, or what is keeping them involved, or what is not. See if you can move individuals from individual participants or team members to team captains. Maybe they'll volunteer with the campaign or for the organization at large, right? And see if you can get them more engaged. Hopefully they become sustained donors for your organization, or even get into the endowment kind of category, beyond just the campaigns themselves, but really helping out, being engaged and involved, volunteering for the organization as a whole, and not just for the campaign. See if you can move them up that ladder. All right, Sarah, some thoughts on any of that?
On moving people up. Yeah, so one area of growth that we have, and we have a lot, I didn't place this event in much context, but for the first 9 years of this event, I was the only development employee at Safe Passage. Now we have 3 people, which is our organization as an effect of this event, really. It's grown by leaps and bounds. It was a $700-something-thousand budget, and now it's $2.5 million. The event raised $6,000 in its first year, and now it raises over 100 times that amount, so over $600,000. So it's been all about growth for us, and we've kind of learned a lot by doing. I know later we'll be able to talk about what we wish we knew, what we know now that we wish we knew then. There's a lot in 16 years. One area of growth that's huge for us is harnessing the volunteers a lot more. This is a very heavily staff-driven event. We do have volunteer committee members doing logistics, and we have lots of volunteers at the event itself. But we don't ask our fundraisers to really be volunteers in the sense of recruiting team members and doing coaching for each other on fundraising. It's really all of the coaching and all of the recruitment stuff is all coming from myself and my colleagues. So that's something that we want to do, and it's just time. It takes a lot of time to delegate to other people, so that's what we're kind of struggling with right now. And just another note about these photos. On the right-hand side, we have one of the brewers at our local brewery, and they actually make the hot chocolate in the brewing kettle, and he's using a hose to fill one of the Cambros with hot chocolate. So that's actually happening.
I think that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You want to talk event production? Try making hot chocolate for 6,000 people.
I bet. Yeah, and I think overall, you got a small team there, but you're small but mighty, right? And doing a lot with a little, and that's all about.
Yep.
I like it. All right, Karen.
Yeah. So the ride, like as I said, it's 25 years old next year, but like Mark said at the beginning, you do have to look at everything with a fresh set of eyes, like every year. Every year, what did we do good? What did we do? What do we want to improve upon? What's new technology? And, this is, I don't know if you guys, but we still have envelopes when people come to check in, and we have almost 8,000 riders, and they have to be alphabetized and all of that great stuff. And it's just painful. But this year we, found an electronic check-in app, and it worked great, and we're going to do it again next year, but we're going to ask them to do this with us, and, and how can we add in rider rewards so we can check them off. So we also had an emergency text number. So if you were on the route, you could text if there was a problem, or maybe that was if there was a thunderstorm coming or something along those lines. So you just always have to look at everything with a fresh set of eyes every year. And, whether or not you've been around for 5 years or 25 years, things can always be better, especially as time moves on. And the same thing is with the analytics. So every year we try to, again, dig deeper into the data. This year we added Hotjar to our ride site so we could actually track what are people actually clicking on, what buttons, how are they scrolling on the page, and when they're in mobile or when they're on desktop. We put a lot of information on that homepage, but do they ever scroll down to see it? Not always. So like, what do we need? If we really need to tell them something, where are we going to put it? Or are we going to add more to the navigation? So it's a hard one. Websites are just like, you want to put a lot of stuff on there, but people really are only going to 2 or 3 spots. So it's one of those things. But again, you can actually get Hotjar for free on your websites if you have traffic under a certain amount, and you might not get all the reports. So it's something to put on your site. So look that up. I heard about that at the BBCon session, and we've been doing it for free for a while before we finally started paying for it. And again, just more analytics on that lower left chart. This is something my marketing team put together, and it's like by year, she looked to see who were our riders and how much they raised and what was their average number of gifts, and, by the different generational stuff. And it's obviously our boomers and our millennials are top in terms of quantity of riders, but we were very happy to see the amount of Gen Zs, because Gen Zs, as they get older, will probably be one of our, bigger groups of people. So watching that stuff is super exciting and interesting.
Yeah, it's a great graph. I like that. And awesome tip on the Hotjar. So based on this particular screenshot, the heat map showing that login and finding a team is more accessed more often than finding an individual rider. Is that right?
Right.
Am I reading that right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
interesting. All right.
So we talking about mobile. We do have a mobile app for the ride. So it's we've had a mobile app for about 4 years. This one is now with the new Blackbaud mobile app that works with TeamRaiser. This year we promoted it a lot more. It worked out great. We had about a 23% adoption rate. So 23% of all of our riders had downloaded the app, and we were able to track how many donations came in through the app. And, you know, we had almost 3,000 gifts that were attributed to a source code on the app. So that really was exciting for us to see the use of that. But mobile is very important for your participants. They need to be able to do things on their phone.
Definitely.
And we are definitely a Facebook integrated for all of my TeamRaisers for the ride and Empire State Ride and everyone else that we have. We are integrated with Facebook. It's made a huge difference for us in the amount of money that we're seeing through Facebook. For the ride itself, was about 25% of all online donations were through Facebook. This year, we raised over $1 million on Facebook alone for the ride. So, and that's just ridiculous.
That's ridiculous. Big money. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have a feel for how much of that was like net new versus just coming in a different way?
We think it's really hard to tell that because the data you get is not the best data, you know, as that's because of Facebook's privacy and how they've locked that down. But what we have seen is that we can tell from the riders, the people who have Facebook generate $250 more in fundraising versus somebody who doesn't have Facebook. And there's some people that were brand new riders and they raised over $1,000 and they had never raised over $1,000 in any previous rides. So it's like that kind of stuff we're seeing. And just in terms of once they're connected, they get a whole new group of people. And Facebook has made it so easy for people to make a $25 donation. It's easier than going to any donation form. And myself will, if I make a donation, sometimes I'll do it. If I'm making a donation to my coworker, I'll do it through there. This is a screenshot from our website, just showing our participants how easy it is to connect your fundraiser to Facebook. I mean, they don't need all these helps, but there we have blog posts on how to connect your Facebook fundraiser and, you know, how to do some other things too. These are just more tools for your fundraisers. If they call up our receptionist and they say, I don't know what to do, she can send them this link and it basically takes them through it.
That's great. Yeah, like you said, it's pretty straightforward as the steps show, but yeah, it's always good to have that documentation just to help people, you know, through that process or show them how easy it is. All right. Now here's a question for both of you. You know, what do you wish you knew then when you started all this out that you know now, you know, 25 years ago, or when you first joined the organization, or 16 years ago? You know, what's that thing that you wish things that you wish you knew then that you know now? What do you think, Sarah?
So couple big things. The first is that free is often not free. I think with a lot of small nonprofits like Safe Passage, the impulse is to try to get as many goods and services donated for an event as possible. And I have lost track of the times that we've gotten a donation of goods or services and really regretted not paying for what we actually needed. It's kind of easy for me to say because our event is so big and we are so successful, but I wish I had made that shift earlier. I think it would have made a big difference. And in the same vein, about spending money to make money, my biggest piece of advice for small organizations in the Safe Passage size of 30 total employees and a small town event is, as soon as you can afford to do so, hire a peer-to-peer fundraising consultant, because the strategies that work the best are so often not intuitive at all, and in a lot of cases kind of contradict other kind of fundraising strategies.
True.
I read Katrina Van Huss's book just 2 years ago, I think is when it came out, and it completely shifted my thinking about peer-to-peer fundraising. Even though it there's a lot I already knew, it really helped a lot. And so I can't recommend that book, which is called Dollar Dash, highly enough. When I bought it, I thought it was just going to be like a basic book about peer-to-peer fundraising that I could have new staff members read and learn about why we do it the way we do it. And I ended up learning so much from it. So that's a plug.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I like it. How about you, Karen?
Well, and because my role is definitely more technology, I mean, I think it's just amazing how much my life has changed in the 6 years that I've been at Roswell, from starting in Sphere to now being in TeamRaiser, but just with the apps and, just with the Facebook, I mean, everything changes with technology. You have to have that open mind, but you also have to be on top of it. I feel like you need to work with partners like Cathexis. You need to go to conferences. You need to be open to things. Not everything is as easy as they tell you it's going to be. And like, oh, how do I do this custom coding? And now I need to figure this out. I mean, it just is constantly, it's my job, and it's good it's my job, because I don't know if anybody else in the organization could figure it out, because it takes time, and you just have to be in it every day. And I guess also just that I would say is that data, as I've said earlier, is just more and more important. It's just every time I turn around, I'm in a meeting talking about this bit of data and that bit of data, and how can we do journey mapping and personas and scoring, and how are we going to look at the data this way. So make sure your database has good information in it so that you can report on it, whatever system you're using, and that you can track things that year over year, because your board members are going to want it. If you can't do it, you're going to have to figure it out.
That awesome advice, and yeah, experience from both of you guys. Thanks. And I just realized how much time I've spent on this slide of this child being brutalized by Jenga.
I know.
So, thank you, everybody, for. I'm sure you've focused on that way too much. And who is that person that spooks him just enough to? Yeah. So that's nice. So yeah, let's move into questions. We've been receiving questions along the way. I've been trying to poorly multitask and answer some of those along the way, but also have some other ones. If you have any questions, we do have a couple minutes left, so feel free to type them in. So the first question that I wanted to see, Karen, maybe this is probably best for you to answer. And I think I know, but the answer to this. But the question is: have you solved the issue of not getting donor information from Facebook?
Solve it? I mean, it is what it is. So we accept it. We are working with a small company that has, out of the UK, GivePanel, to try to communicate with Facebook fundraisers, people who are doing organic Facebook fundraisers, and to try to communicate and get their information that way so we can add them to our list, et cetera. However, for our TeamRaiser Facebook fundraisers, we accept the fact that we are not going to get their email addresses. We just know who the donors are. But what we do is we really tell our participants, we make it really clear to our participants, you have to thank those donors. We cannot thank them personally. They get, just the general receipt. So we work to make sure that people are thanking them, and we give our fundraisers advice on to all that stuff, but we accept the fact that we are not going to get their email addresses and move on.
Yep, agreed. Yeah, GivePanel and also Give United's another option out there. Definitely right. Some options. And I believe Charity Dynamics just came out with a new tool to kind of expand on that as well.
They have, yeah.
Good stuff. We don't even know who the donors are or how much they raised. Yeah, I mean, that's definitely a challenge sometimes, for sure. And it's such an interesting line for Facebook to draw a line on and start being protective of people's data, right? All right, enough of Facebook fundraising. I am an ED for a very small foundation, staff of 2, with a very small budget, and sometimes seems like an overwhelming task to stay engaged and do all that is needed to raise funds and keep our programming going. What are some of the small tasks that I can keep up on during the year? I think that's right in your wheelhouse, isn't it, Sarah? That's your life.
Oh boy, that's a really big question. My heart goes out to you. Certainly. I think recognizing donors as people with whom you have to maintain relationships is the biggest thing. I'm happy to say that we sort of have a problem doing that because we have so many donors to our small nonprofit, but in the early years it was a lot easier to keep on top of that for sure. And there's lots of kind of systems and protocols that you can put in place to make tracking those relationships easier. I guess that's the big one.
Yeah, good stuff. I like it. Yeah, I mean, it's just trying to take, and that's what this session is all about, right? Rome wasn't built in a day. You can't eat an elephant all in one sitting. All those kind of analogies, and it's just trying to spread it out. Maybe set a task to reach out to one or two donors a day or a week, or participants, throughout the year, and thank them and check in with them. Whatever that is, just try to break it out. And if you don't get to it every day, it's not the end of the world. But if you do a little bit, every week, you'll be surprised how much you've accomplished by the end of the year. Another question was, if you have a type of campaign that requires a minimum fundraising goal, is there a way to capture that credit card information online and charge them for it? Yeah, there's different tools, platforms that do support what's called delayed self-pledge, or basically a credit card guarantee. So if you have a fundraising minimum, you can either at the time of registration ask them to, commit to that and give their credit card information in addition to, any registration fee you might have, and that can be stored for later charging any amount that they have not fundraised. So the difference between what they did fundraise and their minimum can be charged at a later date, and there's plenty of platforms that offer that solution. For a list of which ones do, you can go to our landscape, peer-to-peer landscape guide, which is available on cathexispartners.com, and download that, or feel free to shoot me an email after the fact, mark@cathexispartners.com, and I can share that with you. Another question was, where was it? Our peer-to-peer campaigns are online only, no event. Any specific advice for these types of campaigns? And I'll just say, yeah, I mean, there's evergreen campaigns in some cases where they're just always up and available for DIY or, fundraise your own way. And those are great, and those should be there. But if you can put some type of sense of urgency around them, and time constraint, make people feel like there's, a point to when they need to fundraise by, that also helps. I know, like, for example, Central Florida Food Bank, Second Harvest Central Florida, they have virtual food drives year round, but they basically set them up 3 or 4 times a year so that they are a pronounced timeline. They have a fundraising goal so that people that participate in that are more encouraged to raise funds in a timely manner. I don't know if Karen or Sarah have anything to add to that.
Well, we have DIY fund team raisers or peer-to-peers, and even though there not be in a specific event, somebody might be having a bake sale or their birthday or something like that, we do ask the question, we need a date. We need to get a date from them. When's your event day, or when's your birthday, or what, because like Mark said, it goes along with that. Like, we communicate with them based on that date. So you've got a month for fundraising, or you're 2 weeks away from your fundraising event, or whatever you might call it, and then thank you afterwards. So we definitely, even if it's virtual, I would encourage it be easier for your team to be able to communicate with them if there is some sort of date, whatever that date might be of.
Definitely. Well, I see we're at the top of the hour, so if we didn't get to your questions, I apologize. I'm happy to follow up after the fact, or if you have any questions after the fact, feel free to reach out to us. But wanted to personally thank everybody for attending, but also Karen and Sarah for their time and their expertise and sharing that with everybody today.
Happy to be here. Thanks.
New, any final thoughts?
Nope, I think this was a super great session, and Karen and Sarah, you provided such incredible insights for the audience today, so thank you again.
Terrific.
Our pleasure to be invited.
So unfortunately, we reached the end of our time, so please note that if you're going to be joining the next session at 12:15 Eastern Time, you're going to need to log in using the link that you received in your email when you registered. So with that, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.